And here we go. Good evening, everybody. It is a Saturday night. It is 7:30. Carson Meredith with you. Thanks for tuning in on Wave Weather Now. All in all, pretty quiet setup this weekend, but next week, man, oh man, does that look interesting. And not in a good way. Well, we're not worried about severe weather necessarily, but there's going to be a lot of rain on the way. Maybe looking at 2 waves of rain next week. And that is what we are going to be talking about in part tonight. Those of you who have been around here long enough know that today is March 2nd. It's a very sad day in weather history here in Wave Country. We're going to look back on that awful, awful day in 2012, talk about how things have changed since then for the better, technology-wise, and how we do our job as meteorologists. And we'll just look back on how bad that day was. But nonetheless, all in all, it's been pretty quiet today. Let us know where you're watching from tonight. Got the comments right over here to my left, and we'll keep looking at them as we go along. First off, let's take you live, though, to the 2nd Street Bridge. What a scene that was yesterday, huh? I still cannot get over what happened yesterday afternoon. If you missed our 6 o'clock newscast, you can see the traffic is moving again along the 2nd Street Bridge. The southbound lane, so if you're coming into Louisville from southern Indiana, that is still down to 1 lane. But northbound, heading out of Louisville into southern Indiana, both lanes are open. Just that 1 lane in the southbound direction is blocked off. It's going to be a while before they can get that part of the bridge repaired. Fortunately, it was just sidewalk damage. The road itself is fine. But golly, I still can't get over what happened yesterday. Let's see who is tuning in this evening. Let's see, Murdy's in Frankfurt. Kathy watching on YouTube from Alexandria, Virginia. Hope things are well, Kathy, just outside the D.C. Beltway. Shonda, always watching. Just told my sisters earlier that I hadn't seen anyone mention it. That, of course, being March 2nd, 2012. And that is what we will go ahead and get started talking about on this Saturday night. What you're looking at is a map of all the tornadoes that we had. We'll just call it in the Ohio Valley on that day 12 years ago. Still hard to believe it's been 12 years. Just feels like yesterday in a sense. And we had close to a half dozen tornadoes in Wave Country, but obviously the one that sticks out is that monster EF4 that went through southern Indiana. It started in Washington County, southern Washington County, right along that Washington Harrison County line. And I'm telling you, as soon as that thing touched down, it was a monster. It grew so fast, so quickly. That setup was primed that day for these large, violent tornadoes, which thankfully, thank the Lord that we don't see these very often around here, but unfortunately we did on that day. Look at that photo north of Palmyra that was sent that afternoon. That thing was close to a half-mile wide at its peak. Many, many little small towns in southern Indiana were hit. You don't need me to tell you that, especially if you are from that area. New Pekin, Borden, Henryville, of course. So many little small towns were impacted by this. So this started close to 3 o'clock that afternoon. It was a Friday afternoon. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was a freshman in high school, not to age myself too much there, but anyway, we were out of school that day. For some reason, Jefferson County was out that day, not because of the weather. It was already planned. And me being the 15-year-old weather nerd that I was watching this system like a hawk. And I distinctly remember watching Wave. And you could just tell, you could especially tell now working with Kevin and Brian Good and all of them, you could just tell in their voices that day that this was not going to be good. And unfortunately, that was the case. Of course, we remember the damage in Henryville, the school leveled, 2nd floor gone. One of the heroic things about that day was, I believe the schools were dismissed around 2:30 that afternoon, earlier than usual, and the tornado went through Henryville close to 3 o'clock. I don't even want to think about what would happen if those kiddos were still in school when this sucker went through. EF4, 175 mile per hour winds. This is the strongest tornado we've seen in Wave Country since, I believe, Bullitt County 96. You know, we had the big tornadoes in December of 2021, but remember, a lot of those were to our south and west. We had that big EF3 down in Taylor County with that night in 2021. But the EF4, the worst of it, was, of course, down near Mayfield in western Kentucky. But this is still one of the stronger ones we've seen around here in quite some time. And what a lot of people don't remember with March 2nd, 2012, was you had that first supercell roll through that dropped the big tornado in Henryville and other communities. But there was a second supercell behind the first one that dropped smaller tornadoes. And in fact, you see that green triangle, that was an EF1 tornado that was with that second supercell that went right through Henryville close to a half hour after the big one hit. You talk about a mess. The search and rescue operations were just starting to get going, and here comes another tornado barreling right into town. Thank goodness the second one wasn't nearly as bad as the first one, but just an awful setup to still think about to this day. Folks are sharing some of their memories from that day. We're just going to go through them. Shonda, we talked about, hadn't mentioned it yet. It's just so important to talk about. It was such a historic day for all the wrong reasons, unfortunately. Braden says, I was in second grade and we were cooking. Don't remember what it was. Fayette County schools got out 2 hours early. Yeah, pretty bad hail with those supercells out in Jessamine, Woodford counties too. There was a lot of tornadoes in the mountains. Remember West Liberty, Kentucky, in eastern Kentucky had an EF3 tornado, and it's very rare to see those kind of strong to violent tornadoes in that part of the state. Even more rare than what we saw in Henryville here in wave country that day. Let's see here. Michael says the one that hit Henryville brought back nightmares from 74. I don't doubt that one bit. My mom was maybe 2 blocks away from that monster in 74. She was a kid at the time, of course, and she was going home from some after-school activity. I can't remember what it was. But her and my grandfather, her dad, of course, they turn around, and there is that big wedge in 74, and she still has vivid memories of it. It's fascinating. Dave says the Henryville tornado is what came over Carrollton. Yeah, that same supercell went right over Carrollton, and we'll keep going on the track here. It moved through northern Clark County, of course, southern Jefferson County, Indiana. The Nab community, Marysville, were hit very, very hard by this too. But this thing was on the ground for close to 50 miles. And you notice it crossed the river into Trimble County, caused even more damage in Kentucky. It was an EF3 by the time it got into Trimble County. Excuse me. And like we mentioned, that second supercell produced more tornadoes behind the main one, including another EF2 with winds around 115 miles per hour. So again, it was just a really, really, really sad day. I remember it like it was yesterday. Shonda says her niece was a junior at Henryville. Never been so terrified for her and her friends. I can't even imagine that feeling and what that was like. We posted a video earlier today, by the way, on our Facebook page. If you want to check it out, Brian Hoke put together kind of a montage of the behind the scenes that day in the newsroom and the weather center here at Wave. Really, really fascinating. You kind of get a glimpse of what goes into getting ready for a severe weather event like this on the television side of things. It's about 4 minutes long, has some snippets of our coverage that day, a lot of familiar faces for many of you probably that have stepped away from TV. So feel free to check it out. Just scroll down to the Facebook feed once we're done with our video here tonight. Really, really fascinating stuff, especially for those of you who remember that day so well. Carissa says that tornado went through Pekin, saw it with her own eyes, started your fear of storms. And that's totally understandable, Carissa. Here's the thing, though. Those kind of days, like March 2nd, they are very, very, very rare, especially around here. You know, a lot of the storms that we see around here are similar to what we were concerned about having last week, Tuesday night and Wednesday morning, with a big line rolling through that had little tornadoes that could still cause damage, but they weren't going to be these monsters like we saw on March 2nd, 2012. So take comfort in that. You know, we're always going to be here during severe weather. And that's something that we mentioned when we posted that video today. We were there for you then, and we're here for you now. We're going to be with you every single day whenever these storms roll through. And of course, we're getting closer to springtime. That will likely continue to ramp up, of course. Lacey says that was a scary day. Yeah, it sure was. Dave says the trees in our yard were twisted and snapped. Yeah, that was a common sight, unfortunately, across southern Indiana that day. But if you have any more memories on March 2nd, just post them in the comments. We'll look through them. But we're going to move on with the forecast now, which fortunately does not have any severe weather. Thank goodness. Still a couple of systems to watch, though. Let's start things off with a time lapse, though, of what actually turned out to be a beautiful sunset tonight. The clouds held tough all day. That kept our eyes in the 50s. But those clouds slowly eroded around 4 or 5 o'clock this evening. And it actually turned out to be a beautiful sunset. Now, the clouds are going to move back in overnight tonight. And we will have the chance for more fog yet again. It's almost a carbon copy of what we saw last night into this morning. So just keep that in mind if you're going to be out early tomorrow morning. Let's show you that view of the 2nd Street Bridge one more time. Again, if you missed us here at the top of the video tonight, the bridge is back open. You see traffic moving along. Northbound lanes going into Indiana, both of those are open. If you're coming into Louisville from Indiana, the far right lane is still closed off because they got to do some sidewalk repairs where that semi went over, which I know I keep saying it, but I just cannot believe what happened yesterday. And thank God for the folks of the Louisville Fire Department. Unbelievable. Anyway, temperatures in the low 50s now. 51 last check at Ali International. Most of us are in the low 50s this evening. And like we mentioned, the clouds will start to filter back in tonight. Note the wind. It's out of the west right now. It's going to back. That's what we call when the winds go from west to south. They will back to the south overnight tonight. It's not going to be much of a breeze, but it's a breeze out of the south, pumping in some warmer air, and that'll keep our temperatures in the 40s overnight tonight and by the time you wake up on Sunday. More folks talking about this day 12 years ago. Big chunk of Kentucky was under a rare high risk. Sure was. We don't get those very often around here. Maybe once every, 5 years. That might even be a stretch, maybe more than that. So that was a very, I'll call it a red letter day. Bruce is watching on YouTube. He was in 1st grade. Parents were very scared, I bet. There was a high risk like we talked about. Warning coming out, watching the weather that day. Yeah, it was scary. That is for sure. Thanks, Jackson, for posting that on YouTube. Fortunately, we don't have anything like that to worry about anytime soon. Look at some of our cameras from our friends of the Kentucky Mesonet this evening. Upper 40s, low 50s. Wind is subsiding. Like we mentioned, still a light breeze through the night, but the breeze will not be enough to limit the fog. We will have fog again Sunday morning. And it's not going to be just a few spots here and there. I think a lot of us will see reduced visibilities tomorrow morning, and we'll walk through that here in a second. Tonight, we're down to the mid-40s, 43 to be exact. Clouds fill back in. More of that fog, especially by sunrise. Let's say between 4 a.m. and 11 a.m. tomorrow morning. That's when the worst of the fog will be. And, it's not going to be enough to where it's like, oh, my gosh, I got to stay home. No. Just keep the low beam lights on. Take it slow on the roads. And you'll be just fine. Don't have to worry about drizzle tomorrow morning either. Just good old-fashioned fog. Here's our fogcast. You see those pockets of fog start to develop after midnight. Already seeing some visibilities, at least according to this forecast model, under a mile here in the city. But it gets worse past that 4 a.m. time, starting to thicken up area-wide. Could see some numbers around a quarter mile, especially in central Kentucky by sunrise Sunday morning. And it's going to take a little while to get this fog out of here, especially down towards the parkways in southern Kentucky. Half-mile visibility, certainly not out of the question. So just keep that in mind as you head out early on Sunday. But hey, once the fog clears out, the clouds will start to clear out as the atmosphere starts to mix itself up a little bit. And we're heading for the low 70s tomorrow. Really nice afternoon to get outside. 71 here in Louisville. Most of us will top out in that 71, 72 range. Seymour, North Vernon, you might stay in the 60s tomorrow, but all in all, still a really, really nice day to get outside for your Sunday. Maybe just a tick on the breezy side, though. Around 10 to 15 miles per hour with that breeze. Not too bad. All in all, a nice way to wrap up the weekend. I think we can all be thankful for that. Let's jump into Futurecast, shall we? It's going to get busy next week. That's That's why I'm really encouraging you to get outside tomorrow. Here we go, Futurecast. This is for Monday. Monday. You notice Monday afternoon, those showers do start to develop, especially in central Kentucky. And this is actually going to be one of those days where there are more pop-up showers, similar to what we see in the summer. It's not going to be that warm, mid-70s, yeah, but it's not going to be all that humid necessarily. But with that warmer air still getting pumped in from the south, that's going to set off a few showers area-wide Monday afternoon, especially in Kentucky. Could we have a few heavier downpours Monday? Sure, but I'm not overly worried about flooding or severe weather, at least on Monday. Tuesday morning, here comes the first of the two big waves of rain, okay? This is around 6 a.m. Tuesday. Cold front, slow-moving front starts to move in from the west. That'll set off those showers early. The Tuesday morning commute could be a little tricky with heavy downpours, maybe a few rumbles of thunder. And because this is such a slow-moving front, we're going to keep the rain chances around for most of the day on Tuesday, heading into Tuesday afternoon, maybe even Tuesday night. Both of these systems we have upcoming this week are slow movers. So we'll have to watch the heavy rain potential as we go through those two waves this upcoming week. But we will see quite a bit of rain. There is no doubt about that. All right, here's your 10-day earliest alert. We'll keep the rain around into Wednesday, which, by the way, for the time being, this Kentucky statewide tornado drill is Wednesday morning, just after 10 o'clock. Nothing to panic about. We do this every single year. Your weather radios are going to go off. I'm not sure if the alerts on your phone will go off, though, but the weather radios will. So there could still be some rain around Wednesday morning. Sometimes when that happens, the state may hold off on the test so as to not alarm anybody. But for now, that test is still up on Wednesday. Just something to keep in mind. Let's go to the next system to watch, shall we? That is late next week, Friday in particular. Very similar setup to what we'll see Tuesday and Wednesday. Slow-moving cold front, and with it comes widespread rain, maybe a few thunderstorms here and there. Now, the key with this second system is going to be the position of that low pressure. You notice on this forecast model, I'm showing you that low is going north up towards Chicago and the Great Lakes. If that were to happen, we will have to keep an eye on a line of storms that tries to develop to our west late Friday night. Now, I will say the parameters for stronger storms aren't that great Friday night, but we're still kind of in that time of year where you really don't need to have a ton of fuel in the atmosphere to get a few severe storms. There's no severe weather risk out at this point. It's just something to watch as we get closer to that event. Still 6 or 7 days away. A lot will still change. What we will see for sure is rain, and a good bit of it, with both that first wave Tuesday and Wednesday and the second wave Friday into Saturday. There will be another low actually that develops to our south, right there, closer to Alabama, Tennessee, and Georgia. And that will set off additional rounds of rain, or one additional round of rain at least, early on Saturday, into Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon. Then we finally start to dry things out. We'll keep a chance for some lingering showers early Sunday, but just know next weekend it is looking a bit on the messy side. Now, as far as how much rain we're looking at, quite a bit, actually. And again, this is all going to change when we get closer. The more exact details of how much rain is going to be falling where, that'll continue to be cleared up. But in general, we could be looking at upwards of 1 inch of rain across most of wave country, with both of these waves of rain coming in next week. Wave 1, Tuesday and Wednesday. Wave 2, Friday and Saturday. And we may see, depending on how those rain shields develop as these systems exit down towards Greene, Taylor, Adair County, maybe down towards Washington and Marion County, we could pick up over 2 inches of rain. Too early for exact specifics, just giving you a general idea. We may see a good dose of rain over the next week, which is why I strongly encourage you to get outside tomorrow and maybe Monday too. We'll have some dry time here and there. And oh, by the way, before we wrap things up tonight, do not forget, we spring forward next Sunday. This is the time change that none of us like because we lose an hour of sleep. I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to be doing next Saturday night and Sunday morning, if I'm going to be able to get a nap in before I have to come back to work. But just know we spring forward Sunday morning. That means a couple of things. One, of course, you lose an hour of sleep next Saturday night. But it also means that those sunsets will be later, well past 7 o'clock, starting next Sunday night. So just something to keep in the back of your minds. That time change is not too far away. A couple more comments before we wrap things up. Kathy's asking, she's flying into Louisville on Wednesday. Will there be delays? It depends on if we have any storms on Wednesday. I don't expect any storms on Wednesday in particular. Tuesday, yes, we'll have a few storms. Wednesday, not looking like much in the way of storms right now, so that you should be able to land. Maybe some minor delays here and there, but I'm not worried about your flight getting totally canceled at this point. Hope that answers your question, Kathy. All right, gang, we're going to wrap things up on this Saturday night. Thanks for checking in. I know it's kind of quiet. Not worried about severe weather or widespread severe weather, no alert days, anything like that, but just thought we'd give you an update on what we can expect over the next 10 days. Going to go look over some more data, getting ready for our newscast here at 11 o'clock, and we certainly hope that you tune in. We'll be back on here tomorrow night to talk more about weather and whatever else you might have on your mind. I'll leave you with the 10-day earliest alert. One more thing, by the way, with the higher rain chances will cool down. We'll be back in the 60s starting next Tuesday. Could be in the 50s as we get towards next weekend, with lows in the 30s too. A few more bouts of colder weather still on the way before spring officially kicks into high gear in about 2.5 weeks. That's going to do it for tonight, gang. Thanks for watching. We will see you at 11 on TV and right back here for Way Weather Now tomorrow night. Talk soon.